Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I am a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on January 19th, 2022, at approximately 4:48 a.m. PST. As you can tell, I can't necessarily see far. Obviously, these aren't completely repaired yet, but I'm still quite confident they will be, in time, without surgery. Frankly, I've mentioned this before. I've taken these glasses, and usually, like it used to be a question about what? We're 21, about 15 years ago. My eyes used to be so bad I could not see my glasses that far from my face. Now, I can see clearly at short range, without any sort of an operation, with no functional change to speak of, except the realization that anything your body builds, it can defeat. Now, I returned to this world for one primary reason, and that is to pass on a message to everybody in existence that working together, we can make this a better world for most people. Now, I've gone through a number of steps, but here's the thing. All the tools in the world are 100% useless if you don't actually put them to use. If you don't pick the tools up, they're totally useless. The only tools I offer are ones I'm personally using. They're the same tools I personally put to use, the same tools, the same philosophies I personally live by. Now, I build myself as a spiritual guide simply because the path I'm on is one to lead to a better world. But I cannot make this happen for you. The way the world is built right now, it is on a very, very dangerous decline. Mankind has become so caught up with immediate gratification, with this issue, well, greed, quite frankly, and they are totally ignoring, on the whole, most are ignoring the three karmic laws. Now, these are the only laws I ever bother with. But if you compare these laws to the ones you're following, I do believe you will find that every one of the laws you follow fall into the three that I follow. I just keep it a lot simpler. Now, that being said, the three laws are this. Be true to yourself first. Do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Energy out, energy in. Now, if you're following a law that does not fit into those three, absolutely drop me a line in the comments below because, well, frankly, I'm looking for that one item that derails the whole system. I don't know if it exists, but a very wise young man one day told me, when you've got nothing solid, when you've got no concrete evidence, follow the circumstantial. Treat it as though it is real until you find that one piece of information that does not hold up. The one piece of information that derails the whole thing. Now, I mentioned a couple of days ago, maybe even as much as a week, I don't know, I'd have to go back and look. But pick 12 things in your life for this year that you desire to accomplish before the end of this year. Now, here's the thing. I haven't got all 12 of mine listed. However, of the 7 I've got listed, okay, 2 of them are now dealt with. 2 of them are now in the printer. Well, they're not dealt with, but they're on that way. They're in the printer. And that is the end of an epoch. Okay, getting it into the printer. It is now, it's in with Author House now. Okay. It's already in print locally. So it's already available to me. And I'll get back to that in a little bit. The other one was Mr. Dreamcatcher Returns. He's also sitting in the printer now. Okay. These are 2 of the goals that I have. I've still got 5 others that I'm working on. Now, with that in mind, when you're looking at the 12 goals that you're making for yourself, remember to break them down into 15-minute to half-hour tasks where possible. Now, this may not be possible, especially if you're looking at a dream being, I desire to build a house. Well, that ain't getting calculated in the period of 15-minute to half-hour interview. 15-minute to half-hour segments. Okay, this is a live reading, by the way. A live reading. This is a live recording, which means when I get done, I go back, double check the date, and post it as is. Okay, I don't bother changing any of the hiccups. As you can see, when I talked about reorganizing the office to get the energy flowing right. Okay, I've got that sign up here. It actually sat nicely. That sign up there, in case you can't quite read it, says I am worth it. One of the things I'm planning on doing this year, when summer hits, when the heat is there, is taking that down taking it back down to the park and burning it a little deeper. Okay, because that's done when that is all done. That's hand burned, as in take the sheet, take the board, and use a magnifying lens. Now I've got a very important question for you, and I posted this on my Facebook page, on the Yldrbac page. Okay, this story, this is the way this works. This story here, okay, the birth of the wolf pack. The way this story, the way Yldrbac is written, is a 12 story. It's a 12-volume saga. It is written in 4 trilogies built back to back. Because of the way the story came out, because of the way it all evolved, I ended up actually writing the 10th book in the saga first. That's the birth of the wolf pack. Okay, but here's where the question for you comes in. Because I've got a very complicated decision, and it really doesn't matter in a lot of ways. All of them are coming out. The question is, and I would like an answer from those of you that get this. All I'm looking for is to find out whether people prefer one of 2 options. The final book in the 4th trilogy will be The Return to Paradise. Now, here's the way this is set up. I've already written into The Return to Paradise. At the end of it, there is a direct link way back to book 1. Okay, to the first book in the saga. Now, the question is this. I can go back, write the first saga, okay, write books 1, 2, and 3, after book 12 comes out, go back and write the beginning years, which will cover. What that does, it goes back to where everything began. It will cover in it, or it does cover in it, issues on soulmates, on soul family, twin flames, and reincarnation. Okay. It also covers the topics of evolution and creationism and ties them together. Okay. Now that's in the first book. That's in the first trilogy. Now that one is already set to go. All of them are already being written. Okay. So what I would like to know is if that option is what you would like to see come out next, or the other option is going back into Yldrbac, the middle years, that is what leads up to what became the birth of the wolf pack. Okay, it covers the ancient races, as in the elves and dwarves and many other races, coming back to the surface. Okay, then that's in book 7. In book 8 will be the arrival of the offworlders, of alien technologies. Now, don't forget, with the ancient races, we have things like what people call true magic. Okay, this is why I call the Yldrbacian saga a science fiction, science fantasy. Okay, in book 8, it brings about the arrival of the offworlders. Book 9 is the Great Collapse. Okay, but in all of that, you'll get to find out some of the histories of the primary characters in the Birth of the Wolfpack. Okay, which has obviously its own issues. What I'm not entirely certain of, and obviously the final decision has to be mine. What I'm not entirely certain of is what you would prefer seeing. And as I put in the post in my Yldrbac page, okay, on my Yldrbac Facebook page, majority rules. In other words, whichever trilogy the majority of people desire to see come out next, okay, is the one I'm going to deal with because I'm writing all of them anyway. Okay, and they will all eventually come out. The difference is the speed that they come out. Because clearly, even if I'm looking at one book a year, I'm looking at you're looking at 6 years before book 7 comes out. Well, actually, I guess it'd be 7 years. When you think about it, because I've got book 12 and book 12 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sorry, it'll be pretty much 8 years. But that being said, it's essentially up to you. Okay. I mean, I'm going to write them anyway. And I've already started getting responses back. But because I've got a year before I'm going to actually get the Return to Paradise out, okay, I've got a lot of time to watch for what comes next. Okay. Now, this is the sequel to The Birth of the Wolfpack. It's already out, obviously, or I wouldn't be holding on to it. But for the moment, they're only available to me. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. If you take a look at the back of these two, okay. Actually, if you take a look at it, the books themselves on the binding, the pictures line up to create a bigger mural. I came out well. The same thing applies to the back of the books. Okay, is they create a mural. Now, obviously number 12 is going to go on this side. It will have the outside binding as well. But that's the other thing with bringing out 7, 8, and 9. The picture will come together a lot quicker. Okay, instead of doing the bottom and then doing the top, if I bring out 7, 8, and 9 next, it adds it right to that picture and you get to start seeing the way it comes out. Rest assured, they're all going to come out eventually. Now, and I just did that because, well, it seemed like the best way to get an answer. So that said, okay, this is a project that is obviously, we're talking a decade long project. In all fairness, it's already been almost 5 decades. Well, it's been 4.5 anyway. Okay, since I first wrote the storyline. And this is what I mean by projects having to be broken down. Okay, the same thing applies to your projects. Now, whether you've got a project that is a decade long, or whether we're talking about one that is just a short-term thing. I mean, think of it this way. I've already started clearing out the shelving behind me. Okay, I will be going through the filing cabinet. You won't see that change much. But what is happening is I'm getting a lot of of the projects out of the way. Okay. But the big thing here is I cannot do this on my own. Changing the direction that the energy in this society is going, I cannot do alone. I can change it for me in my world. But with your assistance, we can change it for the entire world. Okay. But you've got to do your part to change your life. It boils down to figuring out what you're content with, staying focused on the things you're content with, work with them, right? But when you find something you're not content with, no matter what it is, make a change. Okay, make a definitive change to it. Doesn't matter what you change it to. Because if you're not content with it, you can always, if you're not content with the outcome, you can always change what you're doing again. If you are content with the outcome, stay on it. Now, where right now society is following a few things that do not make sense. The so-called spiritual leaders. Okay, in general, especially when you look at mainstream religion, in general, they are teaching you to fear virtually everything. Okay, mankind has devolved to the point that immediate gratification is the key factor, and materialism is way beyond reason, at least in my eyes. We have to turn the thinking back to the family, to the base root of society. If we do not start working together, regardless of the differences, or more to the point, because of the differences between people, between species, is what makes everything work. But it all works together. And if we work together, if we put aside our differences and really accept the way that other people are, as my father used to put it, he used to say, it would be a real boring world if everybody were identical. Okay. Understanding that, when we start talking about racial differences and species differences, well, species is a whole different ballgame. But that's where I got hung up for a while. When you take a look at racial differences, okay, everybody talks about, the big one is the blacks versus the whites. But here's the odd reality. Take a look at global population. White people are actually the minority when you look at the global population. But this does not make them deserving of any special treatment any more than your pigmentation makes you deserving of any special treatment. The fact is, people across the globe, no matter what their religion, no matter what their race, okay, humans across the globe, when they're hungry, they eat. When they're thirsty, they drink. When they're tired, they sleep. And when they're happy, they laugh. You get the picture. Okay, kids are born without prejudice. It's time the adults start paying attention to the kids that don't deal with prejudice. Kids, and you don't believe me, take a whole pile of 3 and 4-year-olds, put them together. Don't worry about their color. Don't worry about what their religious upbringings is what their religious upbringings are. Put them in a sandbox, and you will find these kids will find a way to get along. Okay, they don't get the prejudice thing until they get older, and adults teach them. Okay, adults teach prejudice. They teach fear. They teach greed. Okay, now, in all fairness, kids have a little bit of fear of their own, which is actually not a bad thing. But when you're promoting everything and saying fear this, and this, okay, what you're doing is creating an atmosphere that is absolutely toxic to society. Technology is a good thing, but there is such a thing as too much technology. Okay, now obviously, if it weren't for technology, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. Myself, this is how I deal with people now. I've pulled so far back from people, I just plain am not comfortable out in public much. So I, if you will, hide. I just don't leave the house much. But that is definitely not the road I would recommend for you. For me, it works great. Most people require some sort of social interaction. But in order to have that, you've got to treat the people you're dealing with in an equitable fashion. In other words, do unto others as you desire them to do unto you. Okay, now I am a very firm believer that we can pull this off. We can make this happen. But it is absolutely imperative that we put the negative past and the fear behind us. Okay, we've been through a lot in the last couple of years. And if we continue down the road that we're on, it's going to get worse. I'm not a doomsayer. Okay. I agree with the way a friend of mine put it one day when we were talking about the end of the world, because everybody keeps saying, oh, the world's going to end. And he looks at me and goes, yeah, it's going to end in about 5 billion years. So let's not worry about when it's going to end. Dying is relatively easy. Rest assured, I've done it often enough. Okay, living is the real key to having life. Okay. And in all fairness, yes, your physical body will die. Absolutely. But the key to immortality, as it were, is to leave a mark that other people remember. Preferably a positive one. Okay. I mean, yes, we can do absolutely heinous things. But denying they occurred or destroying the artifacts that represent or commemorate what happened is not a way of erasing the events. It's a way of destroying some phenomenal art, but doesn't do a thing for the event. It is absolutely imperative at this time that we take a look at the world and go, okay, what can we do together to make this better? Okay, to actually get through this and get our feet back on track. What I've seen is a staggering number of small businesses collapse because of legislation and because of practices that frankly destroyed their ability to survive. Now, kudos to the people that survived. Absolutely. And I'm referring to the businesses in this case, also to the people, but the way the legislation was dealt with and the way that restrictions were put in place, the smaller companies just could not handle it. And now what we've got is an awful lot of them going bankrupt. Okay, this has to stop. The backbone of society, whether people like it or not, is the small businesses. It is the family. And in my opinion, running a household is very much like running a business. Okay. And for those of you that keep going, well, for those of you that have this idea that men are the ones that are at the backbone of business, many of them in today's society really are. But when you take a look at civilization, something to think about. The men were the hunters. They were the ones that went out exploring. They were the ones that went out and defended the community, the homestead. Okay, they were too busy, out defending or doing the protecting of the place to do a lot of the science. When you look at medicine, when you look at construction techniques, they were originated by the females. Okay, now this does not make the females or the males better than the other. They were a symbiotic relationship. And then all of a sudden, somebody came in and decided that let's see if we can switch that around and make the males dominant. Well, making the males dominant didn't have the desired effect. Okay, it created a lot of chaos because men are taught that we're here to protect, we're here to defend. Okay, but you can take that overboard, at which point you get control and fear. Okay, and this backfires, as was seen when you take a look at way back in the 1960s, when you look at the women's lib movement. It was a great idea, and it certainly pushed for the concept of equality. It's kind of like when the vote was finally turned over to women as well. Okay, we are making headway. But we have to realize that no gender, no race, no individual is more important than the next. And as this sign up here says, I am worth it. This simply means you personally have a lot of value. It may not be monetary. Okay, Lord knows monetary is not my strong suit. Okay, But every person has strengths, every person has weaknesses. Now, for me, I find it easy to write. Okay, draw, that I'll leave to somebody else for the time being. Way too many complications with it. The reality of it from your standpoint is that working together, working hand in hand, we can make this world a whole lot better. We can get past the fear that everybody's been living under. Okay, and we can take the illnesses that are here. The one illness that people seem to have developed and has run rampant, and this is the pandemic that I'm really worried about, is apathy. Okay, where people go, it's not my fault. It's somebody else's fault, and because it's not my job, I'm not doing it. Well, turning the energy around in this world to get society back on its feet is everybody's responsibility. But you can only be responsible for you. As a parent, you do have the responsibility to guide your kids to get them to take responsibility for their lives. But that's your job, and it's one you took on when you decide to either have kids or adopt them. Okay. So, that being said, it is time to start really focusing on the positive. Focus on the things that are beneficial between us. Focus on those connections, regardless of where you are in the world, regardless of how you got to where you currently are in life. If you've got a surplus, if you have a strength that other people don't have, that other people around you don't have, please reach out and give them a hand. Okay, I am absolutely asking you to join me on this journey to change the energy in this world to make it a more efficient, a more enjoyable world for virtually everybody. There will certainly be exceptions. Okay, but you have a choice to make. Leave things as they are, let them continue to decline. If they continue to decline, well, to give you an idea where they go, look at the Roman Empire. Look at what happened during the Middle Ages, or more to the point, at the end of the Middle Ages. Okay, you take a look at that. The world will go back into that kind of a cycle, and you can fight to get back out of it. Personally, I'd like to see it change now, but that's going to require your assistance. With that in mind, absolutely. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel, and let's share this with every entity in existence, whether they have access to technology or not. By changing the way you behave, it will have the side effect of affecting the people around you, the people you interact with. And what we'll have is a growing circle of impact that can one day encompass the world. We can put this issue of prejudice, of greed, behind us. But it's going to take work. This is not just like flipping a switch and turning everything around. It's going to take work. It's going to take effort. It's going to take time. So I'm absolutely asking you to join me on this and give me a hand to change the energy the world is following. Now, I will be back again tomorrow. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.